Federalizing the Texas National Guard, which could mean a direct clash at the border between federalized troops and the state authorities. Are we going to see a confrontation?
Battle in Texas at the Rio Grande intensifying over razor wire as Governor Abbott of Texas asserts his state's right to defend itself.
The president's taking this very seriously. He's taking this very seriously on behalf of the American people.
Sending in U.S. troops to ensure that the Constitution is followed and the federal government, not the government of Texas, controls our borders.
On Thursday, Trump asked for all willing governors to send their National Guard troops to help send migrants back across the border. It comes as Governor Greg Abbott and the White House continue fighting over razor wire along the border. The Supreme Court has ordered the wire's removal, but Texas troops are still putting it up.
It's not being talked about that much in the UK and all over the world, but there's a standoff coming in America between the Texas Guards, the Texas Army, and also the National Army. It says here, US Border Patrol agents took into custody more than 225, nearly 250,000 migrants who crossed the southern border in between official crossings during the first 27 days of December 2023. That's a huge amount. So in 1 month, they got 250,000. The previous month's record high migrant apprehension was recorded in May 2022 with 224,000. In just 5 days last week, what's last week? Last week is January 2024. Border Patrol processed nearly 50,000 migrants who entered the US illegally, with daily apprehensions surpassing 10,000 thrice, up from 6,400 average last month. According to federal data obtained by CBS News, roughly 1,500 additional migrants are being processed each day at official border crossings under a bidding program powered by phone app. Now, why is this important? This is important because America is starting to talk about a civil war. It is going into the national narrative. It is going into the narrative of humans. And when this talk starts to happen, we've got to sort of think, what's going on? Texas has had a history of wanting secession, meaning it always wants to break away from the federal government. Everyone in power, from White House to the hedge fund managers to the Supreme Court of the United States, has decided to destroy the country by allowing it to be invaded, Tucker Carlson wrote last week from his 11 million followers. The problem is that this is talk which is quite dangerous because you're saying that the government is incompetent, and you've got all these people coming in which are invading. The standoff comes amid a recent and growing acceptance of political violence. October polling from the Public Religion Research Institute found that nearly 1 in 4 Americans agree that patriots must have to resort to violence in order to save our country. There is this idea that the countries are being invaded. Now, the left say, no, this is basically what the right want to say because the right want to be racist or whatever it is. And the right say, no, the left want to do this because if you allow lots of these people in, they're more likely to vote for that person or that party in the future because it's more soft on them. And therefore, you start to change the national geographic and the mindset of the people in the country. If you allow lots of people in, the country will navigate into a new position, into a new tree branch. Now, this isn't only going on in America, this is also going on in the UK. The UK, I think last month or last year, had 50,000 illegal immigrants come in. The country is changing. So if you ask the question, how many illegal immigrants come to the UK every year? In the year ending June 2023, there were 52,000 illegal immigrants or migrants detected entering into the UK, up 17% from the year ending June 2022. 85% of these arrivals came from small boats. They're coming from France. How many legal immigrants came to the UK in 2023? 672,000. So that's just under 750,000. Some of those are going to leave. Some of those are just students. Some of those are going to stay. What is happening is that the energies of these countries, if you look at countries not as places of people, but you look at them as ideologies or energies, those energies are sort of cordoned off, and you have you have borders, and those borders separate energies. So you have difference in culture between, for instance, black people, white people, brown people, Asian people, yellow people. You have in Europe different cultures between the French, the Germans, the English. And in those different cultures, you've got things like cheese, wine, art, music, poetry, philosophy. Existentialism comes from France. Luther's 95 Theses comes, I think, from Germany, doesn't it? So you've got John Knox from England. You've got ideas about Industrial Revolution, which have come from England. You've got the Renaissance, which has come from Italy. So you have all of these different ideologies, and they're very beautiful. When you start putting them all together on purpose and forcing, then they start to fight with each other. And you also dilute the mindset of the national mind. The reason I think this is quite important is because I listened to a documentary which had a KGB personnel, which is the old secret service in Russia. And they were saying one of the best ways to destroy America would be to make it implode from within. And this was not a physical war, it was a psychological war. And it was done by psychologists, therapists. And the idea is to turn the country on its own ideals, or to turn the country on its values. Now, whether the values are correct or whether they're not correct is besides the point. Each country has a right to believe in a set of values it wants, depending on the culture and the particular character of the people, which are basically, like you might say, expressing God. If God can express himself in a plethora of different ways, then he would do that through different characteristics and cultures. And so having different music from black people, jazz or gospel, having music from white people, classical music, opera, you get different manifestations of creator. Now, if you start mixing everything together, you get, I would have thought, some very interesting art coming off at the edges, but I think most of the issue becomes quite volatile in the middle. You're not allowed to say that there are some cities or places in Europe where white people can't go anymore. It's seen as racist, it's seen as right-wing, it's seen as white nationalistic. But unfortunately, it does seem to be true, but it won't be put into the papers because the papers, the majority of them, seem to be left-wing standing. So the idea of the left wing, which is now quite far to the left, when it sees sort of the centre, it says that the centre is the right, when it's not actually the right. And the problem is that the reaction to the left is bringing up the national right. So you're going to get more racism and more nationalism in order to protect what the left says is not true. It's a fear tactic that the right are using to justify their actions, which is they are being invaded by a different culture and their culture is being dissolved. And the left will be saying, no, we need people to come in, we're open. They actually enrich the country and they help the resources because the population is quite old and we need younger people coming in for workers. However, if the left allows a lot of those people to come in, then those people are going to vote for them because they're going to want to have nationality, they're going to want to have rights, they want their family to come in, etc. So it's very difficult. It's very difficult to have a view, and I'm sort of in the middle. And my view is sort of that the culture of the country that you're in needs to be respected. And if other people come in from abroad, they need to respect that culture and they need to adhere to the laws in that region. I'm very happy them bringing their own ideas in as well, which enrich my country. But I don't want things which are attacking the values of my country or changing the way that I live. And this is one of the issues going on. Now, if America does have an internal conflict, you've also got to remember that there are conflicts going on throughout the world. There are 3 nations which are not happy with the West. The West has gone LGBTQ, it's gone woke, it's putting missiles on Ukrainian, Russian borders, it's controlling the world with sanctions, it's got a printing machine. However, China has got a social credit system, it's under a dictatorship. Iran, it's got, the fashion police, where if you don't wear a veil, they beat 16-year-old girls and they kill them. And then Russia, which you could say is corrupt. So everyone's a bit of grey. I don't like this idea that there's the good and the bad. The West is good and the East is bad. No, the West has behaved quite badly and the East isn't too good itself. Now, my prediction is that what will happen is there will be a war. There will be a world war somehow. I don't know how long. It might be over. It might be lots of little wars all over the world for a large amount of time, like 20 years or 30 years, or it might be very short. But I do think there's going to be war, and I think whatever happens in the war, I don't think the West is going to win. I don't think the East is going to win, but I think it's going to do slightly better, and I think the war is going to change the mentality of those actors in the East, and I think they will change through the war themselves as well. As in the Second World War, Europe changed. It became more socialist and it lost its empires. And also America changed when it got the world currency from the British. So America enriched itself in the Second World War. Europe went down. It gave up its power. And Germany changed, as you know. Japan changed and came over to the West. So all of these countries, they go into the war. It's like a marriage, isn't it? They go in thinking one thing, and then when there's the divorce, they come out completely different and changed. Now, America at this moment is with the West fighting a war in Ukraine. So it's a sort of a proxy war. America is fighting Russia through Ukraine, and also Britain. They're helping, they're sending arms. Then suddenly there's a war in Gaza between Israel, which is West, and Gaza, which is East. It's supported by Russia and by Iran. So you then have a proxy war with Iran and Israel through the Gaza Strip. Now that means that the boats that they've got around the world helping them in Ukraine or helping them protect Taiwan from Chinese invasion have to be brought now to Ukraine to help or to back up or do whatever they're doing. Then suddenly you get another war, which has just happened now, which is in Yemen. So Yemen have caused problems in the Suez Canal, whereby the ships and the trade trying to get through are being blocked or attacked, which means they'd have to go all the way around Africa, which means that trade then becomes more expensive. And it also means it becomes more time consuming. So the Suez Canal allows the speed up and the cheapness of goods to arrive, which is trade and capitalism. And so by blocking it, you cause problems in Western cultures and Western economics. Now, the Yemenis, they've used very cheap technology in order to cause problems by firing at cargo ships, which means that the British have had to send in one of their aircraft carriers, which means it's being taken away from another area, maybe Taiwan or maybe Ukraine. Now, the issue here is that, like the Ukrainians, the Yemen people have used very, very cheap technology, drones or rocket launchers, which have managed to get into the hands of people that don't have a lot of money and have managed to get a £1 billion aircraft carrier, probably with 50 to 90 billion worth of airplanes and technology inside to travel. So you've got a 50 billion aircraft carrier, which is now confronting a group of people that don't have an airplane or a helicopter between them. Now, China's watching what's going on, and it's saying, okay, so, you know, having these wars, actually, you don't need a lot of very advanced technology. You can have different types of technology to take a lot of time and resource out of these major players like England and America. So America's getting into a situation whereby if it gets into a civil war, it becomes extremely weakened. And then other actors like Russia, Iran and China that want to take over world power, they want hegemony, that would be their time to strike. If Ukraine is lost, it means that Russia has won, which means the East has won the first war. Now, if the East wins the first war with Ukraine, it will give the other three the idea that NATO and America and the West is defeatable. They can be defeated, which means that China may get an idea that it wants to take Taiwan back. No matter what you think are the rights and the wrongs of Taiwan, whether Taiwan is actually part of China or not, they will very well go and get it. And they've said in 2025 that's what they want. If you look at the American potential civil war problem at the moment, you'll see there's a lot of war talk, and there's a lot of Third World War talk going along at the moment. In fact, in Europe, they've managed to try and bring back conscription. The Germans have said 5 to 8 years there'll be a war with Russia. The Finland people or the Swedish people, one of the NATO chiefs, has said they need to call up conscription. And they've got their idea of conscription very much from how the Ukrainian civil army have managed to thwart a Russian professional army. And that is the argument which is being used by Britain, which helped train a lot of those people, that actually we need to start training up the civilians in our country as a sort of a conscription, or a de facto conscription. So countries, they're saying, they're rattling the saber a little bit. They're saying, or they're putting the fear into people. Chief officers, generals, ex-generals are saying we need to start arming again. We need to start getting conscriptions. We're going to war. We're having a third world war. So if the language in the narrative, the modern narrative, is saying we're going to have a third world war, and now this narrative is coming out of America, that America is going to go into a civil war, then the prophecy might come true. And that will be a time when those countries wish to attack. Now, I want to show you a couple of clips, which is about Orwellian talk. In George Orwell's book, 1984, there were a couple of words called doublethink and newspeak. And I want to show you how the news are playing games with the people. How what is actually going on, they're saying, is the opposite. So in this clip, you'll hear that they're saying that the Republicans are wanting the invasion, when it's actually the Republicans which are thinking about seceding from the United States because they want to defend their borders.
Republicans are being everything but Republican. They don't want strong borders. They don't want the strongest border legislation that they could get.
And governments don't like being overridden because it takes their power away, and then they start to assert power. And see, if you're going to assert power and you've got two armies which are both asserting power, then it's going to lead, isn't it, to problems.
Governor Greg Abbott refusing to give up control of the Texas border to federal officials, saying the state will not give federal agents full access to Shelby Park today. That ignores a deadline set by the Biden administration, which is today. Instead, Abbott is installing more razor wire following a Supreme Court order allowing federal agents to start removing it.
So what you have is you've got the US government, which is trying to stop Texas from allowing immigrants to come in. Texas is putting up razor wire, and then the national government is saying you can't put up the razor wire and you must take it down. So the national government wants to come in and take it down, and then the people in Texas want to put it up because the people in Texas are saying that if you don't put it up, then we're being invaded. So invaded is like a loaded word, right? So we've got to be careful about the language that we're using, but that's what they're using. But basically they're saying that they don't like the people coming in, and the reason they don't like the people coming in is because it's changing their lifestyle.
Abbott's border actions, blaming the Biden administration for the crisis. Former President Trump wants to take it one step further. He's now encouraging these states to deploy their National Guard troops to Texas to prevent illegal crossings. Trump
that the president used the means at his disposal to get the state of Texas to comply with the Supreme Court and the Constitution of the United States. That means
get them to comply. Get them to comply. And then the next image they show is tanks. So how are they going to get them to comply? By sending in the military. So Biden is sending in the military in order to get Texans to comply with them. That's war.
Sending in federal authorities to act in the way the Supreme Court said they have every right to act. Could mean nationalizing the Texas National Guard. It could even mean, as Dwight Eisenhower did in the case of Brown versus Board of Education, sending in U.S. troops to ensure that the Constitution is followed and the federal government, not the government of Texas, controls our borders.
Step in forcefully like you're advocating.
Front runner Donald Trump and 25 governors support this language suggests that you're on the beginning of a slippery slope. And that's the beginning of the end of the Union as we see it. We're not quite at the point of civil war, but we are at the point of people talking seditiously.
I think the Constitution supersedes somebody in Washington, D.C. telling us.
David, it just seems like the Republican Party, especially the House Republicans, are being everything but Republican. They don't want strong borders. They don't want the strongest border legislation that they could get.
They don't want strong borders. Now, this is what Orson Welles in 1984 called double talk in Newspeak. We've just listened to this man go on about how they're going to send in the army because Texans are getting the border ready to stop immigrants coming in. And then she says that the Republicans are not being Republican because they won't let Biden come in to stop the border. So this is quite, what's going on? So the argument, I suppose, is sort of, Biden says that he's responsible for the borders and it's his job to do it. And the Texans are saying, well, you aren't doing the job very well, so now we're going to do it. And she's sort of come to some sort of loopy conclusion that if the Texans are going to do it against the orders of the president, then, and the president is trying to block the immigrants, the illegal immigrants coming in, and he's not doing it well. But if they're going to do it and they're going to sort of give the American president problems, then they're the ones which are allowing the immigrants illegally to come in, and it's Biden that's the one that's trying to stop it. When the whole argument is that Biden's the one letting them in, and the Texans are trying to stop it. So you can see how this is double talk. There's a juxtaposition. They've spun it. They've turned it around. They've turned it inside out. They've inverted it. This is the media. The media have got a narrative that they're selling, and the narrative that they're selling is not what's actually happening, but they're actually giving the narrative in order to sell to the people, to get the people to believe. But I don't know if people really trust these guys anymore. It almost seems that a lot of people actually hate these guys, and a lot of people, well, the problem is that a lot of people have gone to the alternative media, but the alternative media has been taken over by them in disguise, actually. The new alternative media is not the same as the old alternative media.